think I would like to see people just like embracing others more often. I think we tend to walk around with our heads down in our phones, and even if our heads aren't down, we tend to just not acknowledge other people because we think our agenda is more important or we're in a rush to get somewhere. So I think I'd like to see more of just an ease with like our society and just like a more of an attraction to connect with others and in a sense of like intrigue to want to find out how someone else is doing and want to ask those questions. And I think it's easy just to not do it because you don't want to branch out. Like if you're on the subway, for example, you don't want to like talk to the guy next to you because you'd rather look at your phone, or you feel like you might say something stupid or that guy might not respond to what you're saying. So I think we let fear get in the way of us so much. So maybe it's just like learning to not take those little interactions we have with people for granted and to embrace them more and just to see how special they really are. Because I mean, we're all in isolation right now. So I would hope that some people are treating this time as a way to like reflect on those little moments of just like sending love to someone that you don't know.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Look Up Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Weinstein. Today is May 15th, 2020, and we are coming up on the tail end of quarantine in many places around the world, including the United States, certain states, although my home state of New York and California are still on lockdown. So we'll see what happens there. A couple of weeks back, I had the opportunity to record this episode with Mikael Temrowski, also known as Quinn XCII, a touring artist on my good friend Jesse Coren's management label, which is called Mutual Friends Management. Mike and I had reconnected at Jesse's wedding, which was the weekend before the whole world kind of fell into this spiral and everyone went into social distancing and quarantine mode. And luckily, nobody at the wedding ended up getting sick. We were super lucky, but Mike and I chatted there and decided that it would make a lot of sense for us to sit down and have this conversation on the show. And as Mike says in this episode, he's been creating music for the last 10 years. He's on Columbia Records. He's selling out amphitheaters like Red Rocks Arena and doing huge shows, maybe not Terminal 5 in New York, but Webster Hall. Is Terminal 5 even still in existence? I don't know. Anyways, he and Jesse, the rest of Jesse's crew, Chelsea Cutler and Jeremy Zucker, were on tour called the Mutual Friends Tour. They had sold out a ton of dates. It was supposed to be this summer and it got shut down because of quarantine. And so one of the reasons I wanted to speak with Mike was to discuss his experience as a recording and touring artist over the last 8 weeks and what it means to him in the music industry, that, the touring industry may never be the same, and to understand his perspective. But what was pleasantly surprising about this episode is that we didn't spend much time actually talking about those subjects. Mike brings a contagious positivity to all of his interactions with other people, a sincerity on a path towards self-discovery and joy that I think is truly inspiring. And so while this episode could have gone a lot of different directions, we spent most of our time talking about things like gratitude and manifestation, how faith can lead to success, and how important our own perspective is on life and shaping that perspective, which is within our control. So a lot of themes that we've covered previously on Look Up. And for me, this is really what this platform is about, what this podcast is about whether you're a successful musician or an entrepreneur that sold your company for hundreds of millions of dollars, or a professor at NYU, or just an individual like me without potentially huge accolades to speak of, but just exploring our own path and our own journey in life. We share so much in common. And so through the experiences of the unique individuals that I bring on this show, I hope to highlight that shared humanity and some of the tools that we can use to really improve our own experience of this reality. Enhance, maybe is a better word, our own experience of this reality. And so as always, before I start one of these episodes, I just want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for listening along. I'm humbled that so many of you are reaching out, and this is having a positive effect on your life. And as Mike says, if it's only one person that this show affects, then it will have been worth it. And so, yeah, I really hope you enjoy this conversation, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts. So drop me some emails on this, comments on the social media posts, and we'll be back again next week. Thank you all so much. Welcome to the Lookup Podcast. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. I've been checking out all the stuff on Instagram and like the videos, and we were just talking off air. Like, I know you don't post a lot of videos, but I actually really enjoy the videos and like seeing the people you get to speak with and like just the human interaction, you know? So, but yeah, man, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, well, I started getting more comfortable with YouTube and getting more comfortable with seeing myself on video. And so usually if I'm in person, I'll capture some with the iPhone and put some videos up, like Blue, who I just mentioned, before when we were off air. She led me through a meditation in one of the episodes, and I had that video, which was just so perfect. A meditation on trust. It's just so crucial right now. And I want to just get this out of the way. So like, can I call you Mike, or do I stick with Quinn XCII?
For everyone listening, yeah. I mean, like,
I don't want to dox you.
No, it's totally fine, dude. I mean, you and I know each other, so please call me Mike. Yeah, I kind of like, whenever I like become close enough with someone, I always just kind of insist, like, please don't refer to me as like Quinn. It just kind of it freaks me out. You don't have to do it. So yeah.
Well, what's the origins of Quinn? Where'd that come from?
Yeah, so the name is an acronym that stands for Quit Unless Your Instincts Are Never Neglected. So I came up with that back in college when I was pursuing music, but I was looking for a kind of a better artist name because my name's Mike, last name's T, starts with a T, and I went by Mike T, and I was like, oh, that's cool, but I mean, it's kind of nickname-ish, kind of. Doesn't really sound that.
And you already have Ice-T, right? So
yeah, I already had some competition. Yeah. So I think I wanted to come up with something. I wanted a name that not only that I liked, but also stood for something that I really believed in. And I think this acronym just kind of, in my eyes, symbolizes how if you just have something that you really are passionate about and you have an instinct to go for it, and you might be nervous, you might be scared of what the future holds with that path, but as long as you feel good about it and it gives you joy, I really try to urge people just to follow that instinct, because I think, as cliche as it might sound, I really just do think life is too short not to run with that feeling and pursue it as much as you can. So yeah, I'm super lucky that music's been able to work out for me, and that name it's been cool explaining that name to people, because I think it gives them a little bit more of it gives me more of an identity, I think, as a person, and it lets them see a little bit more. And to me as not only just a musician, but as just a guy who is trying to survive on, Earth and do it as best as I can. So yeah, cool. And then the 92 was just the year I was born. So
got it. Yeah, I mean, that's so beautifully put. I mean, we're all just trying to get by. We're all trying to survive, and it's so. I love this. This is the first time that I've had a musician on the podcast, and a successful one at that, a famous one. And it's, there's so much that I want to talk to you about in that regard, because to the point of your name, when you created that name, you had no idea the level of success that you would have in the industry. And now, here you are selling out major amphitheaters across the country, and I know you had, I believe, a sold out Red Rock show with Chelsea Cutler and Jeremy Zucker and your friends. And the way we met, for listeners, is through your manager, the wonderful Jesse Coren. And we connected, again at his wedding, like the day before coronavirus quarantine kicked in.
Maybe the last thing you could do before all this happened.
He's such a lucky dude. I love Jesse. He always has like, he's got a horseshoe up his ass, man. Like the last wedding possible before quarantine is Jesse. Unbelievable and well deserved.
Yeah, no, that was great. Shout out to Jesse and Becca.
Yeah.
Funny, man. Yeah, that was good times.
It was super fun. And yeah, I mean, Jesse's an incredible person. And obviously he, you know, he and you connected while you were still in college. So while you were kind of growing into the artist that you become, and, you know, I know for Jesse, it was the beginning of his career as a manager, and to watch you two grow together has been, as a friend, you know, and a newer friend with you, like it's been exceptional to watch the growth, and just so joyful for all of you and the whole crew. Yeah, I wanted to lean in a little bit though, because you probably had no idea that you'd be in this place today. Is that accurate, or did you really see it?
No, that's a pretty fair assessment. I would say, but you know what's funny is you're totally right in saying that, because I agree with you. I don't think I would ever imagine that. I could have ever imagined, I should say, that I would be able to do the things I've done already, and it's such a blessing. But I really do believe I always had a feeling inside that this oddly was going to work out. So while I'm saying that it's shocking and it's the greatest surprise ever, and I'm so happy and fortunate, I also still had this feeling of like, I just, like, in my gut, like I can remember graduating from Michigan State and like working a cubicle job at an insurance company and just being so unmotivated and so just like down in the dumps for being there, and I could tell, I just knew that like the corporate thing wasn't the way my life was supposed to kind of go in that direction. And even amidst that time in my life, I was still super confident. Like something in me was deep down like telling me like, it's, you know, the music stuff's gonna work out. Just give it time. And it was more of a feeling than anything. So I don't know if you want to, if that was like God speaking, or it was just the universe kind of comforting me. But like, I really do believe that like I always had this like sense of ease with music, and almost you could say it was like a confidence that it was just going to work out. That being said, I still sit here today talking to you, and I'm like, this is crazy. You know, we were just saying I just moved into a house here in Venice. Like it's amazing, and I'm super blessed. But
yeah,
I don't know. It's weird. I kind of had that. Maybe it goes back to the name. You know, the acronym about just having like an instinct. I think maybe that was it. Like just kind of like comforting me and giving me the courage to continue pushing along, even though sometimes it wasn't like the greatest days, and I kind of thought things weren't really going anywhere with it. Yeah, so it's very interesting actually that you asked that, because
that's super. It is super interesting, and I'm fascinated by this concept of, you know, of manifestation. I had a conversation, and she keeps coming up, but she's just a wonderful human, Blue Cosmic Eagle, who has her podcast, Deja Blue. And I invited her on to interview, and we talked about like, do you believe that anything is possible? And it's fascinating because my response was like, I don't, you know, like I don't believe that anything is possible, because I feel like we're bounded by certain laws of nature. And with this latest, and since then, you know, this coronavirus situation has happened. And if I had said 2 months ago that the entire world's population essentially would be sent to their rooms by an invisible, you know, pathogen that could kill you, you'd have said I was fucking nuts. And if I told you that almost 25% of Americans would be out of a job in a month, you'd tell me I was nuts. And so I have this sense that if anything is possible on that front, like towards the shocks, the fear shocks, then anything is possible on the other side. And I'm tapping in more to teachers like Joe Dispenza, to Deepak Chopra, who describe this unified field of potentiality, and that all manifestations of ourselves and our reality are available to us if we simply believe in them. And the word that you used that really struck me is ease. Because the prayers of the great masters are not them sitting on their hands and knees, looking at the sky, shaking and begging for God or the universe to provide them with something. It's a certain elevated knowingness that what they already know to be true will happen, and the only thing separating them from that reality is time, which in and of itself is potentially an illusion.
I'm actually reading Deepak Chopra's book, The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. And I'm only like 3 laws into the book. So I guess you could say 3 chapters, but I already kind of understand what you're talking about in the sense of pure potentiality. That was one of the first things I learned. And yeah, you said that word ease kind of struck you when I was describing my like first kind of years of just figuring out what, as like a professional, like if this is going to work out for me. And you're right. Like, I don't know how much more I can elaborate on it, but it is like this feeling of comfort and just knowing it was going to work out. And it's a weird thing because now that it has, I often kind of look back on things that I was feeling in that time. And I think that strengthens my like spirituality more, because it just confirms that what I was experiencing then was part of something bigger and was part of, I kind of have a little bit more answers to it. You know, obviously there's still so much more I'm still discovering, but this is just one little like example of kind of those feelings I had. They're validated, and there was something to it actually, because I'm now living what I wanted to live. I now have that job I always wanted, you know, and I have, you know, everything I really like prayed for as a kid is like starting to kind of unveil itself. And without sounding too like conceited, but like that really is so powerful to me to kind of just know that what I was asking for is slowly becoming a reality. And that gives me more confidence to dive into my spirituality, because I don't think I needed like evidence, but it just feels that fire more, I guess you could say, to want to dive deeper and like really, and that really actually helped grow my like my relationship with God. And you know, I was raised Catholic, but my family wasn't very strong in practicing it. Like, we'd go to church on Easter and the holidays, but it wasn't something we would do every Sunday. And now my wife comes from a very strong Christian family, and I've noticed that through getting to know her, I've just been able to kind of like open up more as like a religious person and kind of get that relationship with God back. And yeah, I think this it's funny how just little things that have happened in my life are bringing me back more to this conversation that we're having about spirituality, and just like making me really, I don't want to say buy into it, but just making me realize the importance of it, and realize its actual effects. Yeah. And like that faith, I guess, is really strengthened over the years.
Yeah. And I want to lean into a few things that you just mentioned. The first point that struck me was, you know, this necessary, due to like the way that our culture is set up, this kind of necessary pause of, you know, I don't want to sound conceited. And it's like, why do we have to present that to make others feel comfortable with our individual success? Like, why are, as Marianne Williamson says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate, it is that we are great beyond measure. And, you know, like, I think that what people need right now is evidence that miracles exist all around us more than anything. And, you know, you did not have evidence when you were graduating from university and working that insurance job and grinding it out at night to produce your albums with Jesse hustling around for you, you hadn't yet received evidence that what you knew to be true, what you believed and what you were manifesting in your career, would ever happen. And so you always held that belief. And I'm sure that there were moments of darkness and moments of doubt, because I think we all experienced that. And stop me if there weren't, because, that's important too.
There still are, there's still doubts everywhere. But please, keep going, because I know I like what you're saying.
No, I was going to say, it's so funny because this quote from, I've got an image of Yogananda sitting on my desk. He was one of the first yogis to bring the practice to the West. His guru, Babaji, his guru's guru, who apparently just disappeared into a cave in the Himalayas. And for those of you that are listening along, you'll know that I referenced this in the last episode, because I also carry around this card of Babaji, and you can see him. It's kind of like a Christ-like figure. Excuse me. And there's some quotes from him on the back of this card. And one of the quotes is that truth is for the earnest seekers, not for those of idle curiosity. It's easy to believe when one sees. No soul searchings are then necessary. Supersensual truth is deservedly discovered by those who overcome their natural skepticism. So it's funny because I experience doubt all the time. And particularly when it comes to this podcast, even, I'm just okay, I'm going through the motions. I'm doing the work. I'm releasing episodes, and there's that kind of masculine energy, that drive. You just released a new single. You have a new album coming out this week. And I want to talk to you about that as well. That drive pushes us forward to create new. But also it's okay, there's also that element of ease and receiving. So for me with the podcast, it's I'm doing all of the work, but I also want, on a conscious level, on a metaphysical level, to be able to pull back and say everything is happening for me as it needs to happen in its time. And if I really care about the audience and community that's listening to this to grow, I need to understand why I want it to grow. And I believe that is because the people that I'm speaking to, like you, have an important voice and important wisdom to share with as broad a community as possible. And not everyone that comes onto this podcast has a platform that they can share from already. So, but it's, for me, it's sometimes I don't have the belief. I say, okay, people ask me what's your goal for this podcast. I'm well, I want to reach as many people as possible. I want to be in the top 10% of podcasters, out there right now. I want to grow the audience. I want to do this for a living. And this is my greatest passion. Every time I have a conversation like this, I'm just wow, this feels so good. It feels so right to me. It's in my center, this and teaching and sharing wisdom from great teachers like Babaji. And yet there's always this doubt that I carry with me on a personal level, which might not present itself in my social media feed and things like that. I try to be transparent about these feelings, but there's always a question will it? There's so many podcasters out there, right? And in your case, there's so many hip hop artists out there, and there's so many musicians out there, even broader, and so many aspiring musicians. And so when you look at the size of the field, it can be intimidating to say, to believe I'm going to have that success, quote unquote, and reach the level that I know that I'm capable of.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That was very well said. I part of what you said, I really, really relate to. You were saying how you obviously naturally want this to be a top 10 podcast and, reach the masses. And that's amazing. You should have those goals. But I think, and I had the same, I still have that. I would be lying if I said I didn't want that for me as well. And as far as reaching as many people as possible and wanting my songs to be top 10 songs on the Billboard charts and all that stuff and win Grammys. And that stuff's great, obviously. But I think, and maybe it was honestly just the last couple of years, I started to realize I was more in love with the idea. As much as I thought I wanted all those accolades, and part of me still does, but I started to realize that I fell more in love with the ability to truly help people and really make an impact in their life in a positive manner. I often get like slews of messages from people via Twitter or Instagram or whatever, and I just get to kind of like dive into their personal problems they have, and they get to tell me how the music's helped them or it's helping them currently through something. And again, like I said, as much as it's cool to get accolades and accomplishments, like I really do believe, and I think it, like I said, it was only like the last couple of years where I started to realize this, and maybe it was just because of, naturally maturing, and I'm now in a point in my life where I'm married, and I feel more like an adult, and I think I'm starting to have I think I'm starting to have more of an adult-like perspective. But I really am. I think I'm starting to see that is such a more gratifying experience when you can help people. If I often say, if one person is affected by it, I feel like I've done my job. And I think with you too, it's like, if there's just one person on the other end of this conversation we're having being like, I need to hear that, what more can you really ask for, And I think we get so swept up as a society of like not wanting or always wanting more, not having enough. And I think if you really just minimize it, it's like you're getting your point across, or you're doing what you are meant to do on this earth if someone is affected by it. It doesn't need to be trillions of people, it doesn't need to be a top 5 thing or whatever. It's just, if there's voices out there that are being spoken for, I really think that is like all we need to worry about as creators, as yourself and mine. And so I try to remind myself of that as much as possible.
Yeah, that reminder, the one that you said, that's what I constantly remind myself is, if this reaches one person, if this recording right now reaches one person that needs to hear what we're talking about, then it will have been worth it. Even if that person is my mom, and holler Elaine, like I'm always shouting her out. You got to meet her at the wedding. I think maybe for like one of like 1,000 people there, but like that's the truth.
Yeah. I often, when people talk and I agree with what they're saying, I always be like, yeah.
No, it's no, not at all. Not at all. You don't have to stop doing anything. I thought you had something coming through that you wanted to share. And I feel that though. I really feel that if this reaches the ears of one person that needs to hear it, then the work has been done and it was necessary. And oftentimes these conversations are medicine for me. So I might even just be the one person that needs to hear this right now, and that could also be enough. So I find a lot of my conversations come back to kind of this balance of creativity and the creative drive of what I describe as the masculine energy of shaping the universe around us versus the receptivity and the openness and the flow of the feminine, and how we can as individuals, whether we're men or women, I don't mean to say that the masculine is for men, the feminine is for women. I think we both carry and have the capacity to integrate those attributes. And it's necessary as a creator to strike a balance between the ambition and, because if you were all receptivity, if you were all flow and openness and just let things happen as they were, you wouldn't create albums. You wouldn't have your next album coming out. There's a certain discipline to getting your ass in the studio and recording and sitting down and writing that I think is crucial. One thing I wanted to touch on as well. Oh yeah. So this other point that you made about service. So that's another theme that continues to come up in this podcast. I had a gentleman on a few weeks ago. Well, we recorded in November, but his name's Bill Brown, and he's the executive director of the Prison Yoga Project. This is a man that goes into solitary confinement in San Diego and teaches yoga classes to like the 5 or 6 guys that are in, isolation, and other classes as well there. And it has a hugely positive impact. And he said the transition in his life, like one of the shifts, was when he moved from, in Buddhism, it's called the Hinayana path to the Mahayana path. And the Mahayana path is the path of service. And it's not like, what I'm realizing is we don't have to shift our actions to service. We just have to shift our perspective. Mm-hmm. And so you've already done that, which is so cool.
That's very fascinating. Wow. Yeah. You're right. It's just a perspective. I think that's so interesting because I think more often than not, everyone just needs a perspective shift. They don't necessarily need a change in action, and I think we as people, we as humans, we have all the power to do that. And everything is just it's just how we perceive the world. We will feel how we perceive the world. And I think if more people realize it's just a shift in perception. I love that you said that, because I think it really is so powerful. Like, I think some people think that they need to, if they don't, some people might think they're underdogs because they don't have enough connections in an industry that they want, or they come from a family of poverty and they can't go to college or something. And we get so caught up in the materialistic, like, deficits that we might find ourselves in. But as long as you have that correct perspective, you're already ahead of everyone who might be in a more fortunate situation than you on a material playing field, as far as money and whatever. Yeah. And that, it's I'm glad you said that, because it's so true. It's really all about just how you, and again, I think fans of mine might be listening to this because I don't think they've heard me speak in this way ever, but
wow, that's so awesome. I love that. Thank you.
Yeah. You're getting the
thank you
you're getting the
for sharing yourself with your fans and with this community.
Of course, man. Yeah. No, I mean, it's really lately it's become a really big part of my life. And but no, back to what I was saying, it's just, I think for fans of mine listening, I think they, I often say that sounds cliche. And I need to work on that, because I think the most cliche things that we discuss, there's a reason we say the same things, because they're true, and I think when I say it's a shift in perception, I think a lot of people might be like, well, okay, I can stay positive, but that's not going to change the fact that I have a bunch of bills that need to be paid, or I don't have a car, or a high school diploma. And the minute you start pitying yourself like that, you're letting your ego get in place, and you're letting your mind just become a prison of thought. And it really isn't more than just a shift in perspective. I don't know. I keep harping that term, but since you said it, it kind of just sparked more inspiration to me about how important that is to let people know. It really is all about how you perceive your surroundings and the world itself, because the world will give you everything that you want from it as long as you look at it the way that you want to. So yeah,
I agree entirely. And I think, from where you're sitting as an artist, you could be sitting there looking around at your peers and comparing yourself to every other hip hop artist or every other person that's out there and saying, why don't I have this, or why don't I have that? And I do this meaningless exercise all the time, right? Where I go on social media and I'm like, oh, that podcaster did that, or that person, that person who is in the Fire Festival documentary is getting all of this attention and I'm not. And that's real talk, that ego part of me is there. And I sometimes have to just beat it down. Or you can say, wow, I'm massively successful. I have everything that I need. And that happens at all levels. No matter if you're Bill Gates or if you're the poorest person. And I speak coming from a place of massive privilege, as someone that had a family that took care of him, that had a college education, that, never wanted for anything financially. I have struggled in my career to make ends meet, but I've always had that safety net. And so I am extremely privileged, and I recognize that. However, certain shifts that I've made that have been powerful for me are this little abundance notebook that is super tiny that I carry with me. And, if I write something on Medium and I get, that month Medium sends me a W-9 for, 7.5 cents from a post, I write down in my little book, I just got paid to write something.
Yeah.
Not oh man, why am I wasting my time posting on Medium for 7.5 cents a month? That's stupid. And to be frank, I used to do the latter. I used to say, wow, I don't have enough. like nothing is enough. And now I've it is that little shift of saying, okay, well, let's recognize what I do have. And that could be as simple as, wow, I have 10 fingers and 10 toes. I have my health. And as we come face to face with death in this coronavirus pandemic, and face to face with really frightening things like losing your livelihood and not being able to sustain your family, right? Like 25 million Americans in the last 30 days have lost their jobs. And like, that's real shit. And so it's hard to talk about this metaphysical kind of faith belief to an audience that's struggling, to people that are struggling. But there is truth in, well, if I take a moment and take a step back and sit in gratitude for what I actually do have, that can be really, really, really powerful. So speaking of, I'd love to take that as an opportunity to lean into, the current situation that we're in, and you as an artist, a touring artist who had sold out shows, like you had a sold out show at Red Rocks Amphitheater in Colorado, like fucking massive scale show that is unbelievable, fired up, and, no, but that's what I'm saying. But like, you could be sitting here and in a state of, man, like, what the fuck? Like, all these events have gotten canceled, right? And I want to hear from the artist's perspective, from your perspective, what this situation means for artists everywhere and for yourself personally.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll speak for me first because I can give you that answer, and I don't know how everyone's taking this weird time, but for me, like you said, at first, I kind of took the latter approach of being like the old way. The old me would be like, what the hell, like Red Rocks, like headlining Red Rocks, like that's something I've dreamed of doing, and just for this imaginary flu to ruin that for me, like that's so unfair, and that was my initial reaction, and I think I'm realizing that this whole time that we're in, I've heard a lot of people talk about how the quarantine has empowered them to do things that they haven't had time for, and that they can take up these hobbies that in their normal day-to-day lives they just wouldn't have time for, and that's great. And I'm on the same page as that because I've been reading more, I've been diving into my spirituality and my faith more, and so I really do believe that this is in my opinion here that this time was meant for me personally to dive deeper into just working on myself and using this time as a reflection of the things that I've been able to accomplish and the things and the blessings that I have, and again, just kind of slow down a bit. I think there is and just, I don't know if you want to say just in a weird, like in the universe's humor or God's humor that
the cosmic joke is what Alan Watts calls it.
The cosmic joke. Yeah. And I don't want to say that, let me retract, because I don't want to say humor because I understand this is seriously impacting people. People are dying. People are losing their jobs. So, and I don't mean it. I know you know that I don't mean it that way.
No, but I think anyone listening would know that you don't mean to minimize the severity of the situation, the lives lost and the jobs lost, but there is a certain, the universe works in mysterious ways, as people say, or man plans and God laughs. Like, I feel you. So
no, you're right. And so just to further that more, I really do think that, this just feels like a time for me to just to center myself more and to be able to get my I guess energy like in a specific point to where the next time I do go on tour, I will be looking at it back to that word perception, and my perspective will be so much different. That's what I'm hoping, at least. I think I'm taking this time to really just like work on myself. and know that, eventually the stuff that I'm missing right now, it's going to come back. But what I want to happen is I want to go back to that. So I want to go back to that every day of life with just such a stronger and richer appreciation. And I really do think that like, there's that ease in me that we were talking about earlier. Like there's something in me that's just, that is telling me that is what this time is for.
Well, I mean, just imagine what that feeling of getting up there on that stage at Red Rocks, because people like I do not believe that we are going to stop congregating to experience art. Like things will change just as they check for weapons at events. They'll check, for biometrics, and they'll do temperature readings, and you'll have contact tracing and all that stuff. And some people will be afraid to go, but man, I'm just thinking about you standing on that stage at Red Rocks, the homie Jesse biting his nails behind the curtain, super excited. And I just can imagine that. I can just feel how much more powerful it will be. And you will project that energy because of the appreciation that you hold for the pause that came for you to go inside, do the work, and then come out even better. And here you are, releasing your art to the world anyways, because you're dropping an album. You just dropped your new single, which I couldn't find the name, man. I need to get better.
No, actually, and not to correct you, but it comes out Friday, so you got time. Don't worry. It's called.
Oh, great. Okay, it's called Coffee. So by the time this comes out, it'll have been released. And the album title was Lessons to My Younger Self, right?
A letter to my younger self.
A letter to my younger self. Like how beautiful is that? And like you're going to be speaking to your younger self from the stage, when you start touring again, and being like, this is what it should have felt like to be on stage, because I fucking appreciate this and it's amazing.
Totally. Well, do you know what's funny? You're 100% right in saying that. But what's funny is a couple things I want to touch on, because I feel like the more we talk, the more answers are being popped in my head. But I saw a quote recently. It was I can't remember the band who had this. It's this lyrics to a song. And I can't remember who wrote this, but it said it'd be such a shame if we came out of this the same. And I think right now as a time, in my eyes, it would be such a shame if we as a population came out of quarantine with that same narrow-eyed perspective and that same lack of appreciation and gratitude. So I just wanted to mention that for anyone listening who might find that interesting, because I thought that was such a beautifully, and I don't know if that song was written about quarantine. I assume it wasn't, but I think it parallels so fittingly with the times that we're in right now.
Yeah, we'll do a song check after the episode. I'll put a link to that in the show notes for sure, because people should hear that. It sounds.
Yeah. But no, to follow up what you said about, I'm going to be on stage looking to the crowd, speaking to my younger self, and finally really relishing that moment. It's so funny you said that, because I can remember I myself watching, and not long ago, watching artists have that moment where an artist that friends with Logic, who's a rapper, I saw he had a Netflix special. There was a show called The Rhapsody. I don't know if you checked that out or not, but you should. It's great. It kind of features, it's like a 10-part series. It features rappers every episode and just kind of gives a breakdown of their personal story and how they got to where they are. And his episode specifically is really inspiring. But I mention that because there's a scene in his interview where he just breaks down crying, and he's like, I've just been working so hard, and it's finally hitting me. I'm just so blessed, and I'm so fortunate. And it's almost like you see him on camera having this waking up moment. And I've yet to have that. And I'm not saying that in terms of I just want to start crying because I'm so happy. That's not what I'm getting at. But I envy people that are able to kind of just have that car crash moment of oh my gosh, I had everything that I wanted it's coming true, And I think that this time, to circle back to what we've been talking about, I think this time of being in quarantine and this reflective like state that we're hopefully all in will help me get to that point eventually. And hopefully it's on stage. Hopefully
it's so funny. It's just so funny how the world works and the universe, because yesterday we were supposed to record and, your dog, by the way, how's your dog?
He's good. For everyone listening, I have a puppy, French bulldog. And, without getting too vulgar, he just has really bad diarrhea. And that's all that happened.
What's his name?
His name's Timmy. So my fans might know Nelson and Timmy. I have 2 dogs. And so French bulldogs just have like the worst battles with like health problems and stuff. So this is like our 3rd time to the vet like this year. So it's nothing new for us, but anytime we do see something, we just try to act on it as quickly.
Yeah, for sure. So we couldn't record yesterday, and I have like a backlog of people that I want to speak to. So I reached out to my friend Danny Steiner, who runs a holistic wellness platform for connecting wellness practitioners to people that need that, called Kensho. And I asked him what Kensho meant. And Kensho is a Buddhist term that describes exactly what you're talking about, these little aha moments. It's like you haven't reached nirvana, which is kind of the perpetual state of Kensho, the never ending state of presence and loving awareness, as Deepak would call it.
Would you call that just like enlightenment? Is that another word for it?
Yeah. So Nirvana is enlightenment. It's a constant state of being aware or present or deeply joyful. And very few living masters that we know of have achieved this level of enlightenment or nirvana, or in the yogic tradition, samadhi. But in Buddhism, Kensho describes those brief moments where you taste enlightenment, where you taste it, that moment of flow state. Let's call it, like you're on stage, but you're fully present to the moment, but you're also outside of yourself. You're not living in your ego. You're not living in your thoughts. You're just flowing, but you're there. The way that Yogananda described it is it's like a dreamless sleep, but you're fully aware. And so that's I just love the way that these conversations come together, because just yesterday I didn't know what Kensho was. Right. And now here I am, and I knew about samadhi and these other things, but like, here you are describing these moments, and I'm like, oh man, like Kensho. And we can go through life with unlimited success or unlimited failures and struggles and be completely unconscious to what's happening around us. And as you said so beautifully, like this is an opportunity, this lockdown, this slowdown, Mother Earth saying, go to your rooms, is such an incredible opportunity for us to slow down and be present. And it can be so hard.
It can be very hard. But again, it's like we go back to what we were saying about man makes plans and God laughs. It's like maybe this was the only way for us to kind of center that collective consciousness and just kind of like, and I don't have the answers. None of us do, but like, it takes that like step forward of believing that it's the first thing you need. You can't achieve anything unless you don't put your foot forward. And so I think that's just how I view this. And I think it is starting to help me. But
what would you like to see kind of change, or what would you, in your imagination, what could the new normal look like? Because there is a part of me that's like, I think we're going to come out of this, and now we're recording on April 29th. Most major cities that have been affected will be, slowly releasing quarantine over the next couple of weeks. And there's a part of me that believes that things will just go back to some semblance of the way that they were before. That there's this other little spark inside of me, kind of similar to that belief that you had when you were first starting out your music career, that's like, things are going to be different. And there's going to be a much larger number of people that have come out of this with a new state of consciousness and awareness as to what changes have to be made. But I'm curious, what you see that coming out of quarantine, what you would like to see embodied in your fans, in your community, and for your loved ones and those around you?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. I have that. I mean, like, I'm glad you said that. I have that optimistic like spark in me that feels that while it might not be every single person, because I just don't think naturally everyone's going to get on board, I think a really big part of our population is going to come out of this with a different state of consciousness. And I mean that in the sense of there's varying degrees of how your perspective can change. But I think just to dumb it down, for the most part, I think people will just have more gratitude for everything. I know I will. I know a lot of my friends talking to will. And so I'm optimistic. I go back to that word. I'm optimistic that most of us will come out of this quarantine with just a better sense of gratitude for everything in our lives. But to answer your question, what I would like to see change is, I would just like to see, I don't know, because it's funny because I live in Venice, and I mean, you're in Venice, right?
Yeah, well, actually, I'm in Culver City. I was in Venice. I was in Venice for we flip flopped. You were in Culver, and
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I don't have to tell you this, but like, it's a pretty wild. I mean, Venice particularly is a pretty wild place to live as far as there's violence. There's just a lot of stuff going on. It's a pretty chaotic. It's a peaceful place to live, but it's also pretty chaotic at times.
I used to live right on the boardwalk, and I've seen people get just decked out. People, guys shitting in the streets, needles in their arm. Like there's a lot of weird shit that happens on the boardwalk for sure. And there's a lot of beautiful stuff. But sorry, continue. I interrupted.
No, you're right. I'm glad you said that, because I don't think I was going to get into it too deep like that. But for people that aren't aware, like, yeah, Mark did a very good job there of explaining, and so it's a place that can kind of be, it's a great place to live, but it can kind of be like nerve-wracking sometimes. And what I hope is that out of this quarantine, and I say that because I'm sure there's lots of other places people are currently living in that they can draw parallels to Venice and how it can kind of be a little crazy at times. And there's violence everywhere, obviously, but I think I would just like to see a more peaceful, just way in people, like a more appreciation for the little things, and a greater gratitude for not taking things for granted, like saying hi to somebody. And I saw like a tweet, like, I'm going to hug every person I see when I get out of this, or I'm going to make eye contact. And I think those little things are some of the most important things that we take for granted, and some of the biggest things we take for granted, I should say. So maybe I haven't really thought about that, to be honest with you, but I think maybe just off the bat, I think I would like to see people just like embracing others more often. I think we tend to walk around with our heads down in our phones, and even if our heads aren't down, we tend to just not acknowledge other people because we think our agenda is more important, or we're in a rush to get somewhere. So I think I'd like to see more of just an ease with like our society, and just like a more of an attraction to connect with others, and in a sense of like intrigue to want to find out how someone else is doing and want to ask those questions. And I think it's easy just to not do it because you don't want to branch out. Like if you're on the subway, for example, you don't want to like talk to the guy next to you because you'd rather look at your phone, or you feel like you might say something stupid, or that guy might not respond to what you're saying. So I think we let fear get in the way of us so much. So maybe it's just like learning to not take those little interactions we have with people for granted, and to embrace them more, and just to see how special they really are. Because I mean, we're all in isolation right now. So I would hope that some people are treating this time as a way to like reflect on those little moments of just like sending love to someone that you don't know. I don't know, that comes off the brain immediately, but there's definitely more to that. I just need to think about it.
Well, I think it's beautiful. I think, I don't share questions beforehand. They kind of just flow. So, I think that off the top, that was a great answer. And I believe what you're getting at is back to that perspective shift towards gratitude, towards an understanding that we are all interconnected. I mean, what better evidence of that than the fact that, me breathing next to you can give you a virus and vice versa. Like we are so interconnected. So let's treat our neighbors with that level of love and respect. I have two questions I wanted to ask from that. The first one was kind of what practices do you have to cultivate and strengthen your gratitude muscle, if any? Because there's a lot of people out there that are just inherently, positive and optimistic and grateful. What do you do to strengthen that appreciation?
Mm-hmm. For me, like many, I'm sure it's meditation. I think that is able in the morning, or I need to start doing it at night as well before going to bed. But I try and do it every morning. And even if I'm not being told, even if the teacher who I'm speaking, who is speaking to me, is not telling me to be grateful, a sense of gratitude arises naturally. I think that's what's so powerful about meditation, is it brings to the surface things that aren't even being asked of you. That's such a special thing. And I think for people who haven't tried meditation, I think it's such a beautiful way to awaken to things that you didn't realize needed to be woken up. So for me, one of those things is gratitude. So when I'm in meditation, I naturally start to just appreciate the house that I'm sitting in while I'm meditating, the couch that I'm on. Even if my dog comes in and sniffs me, I'm grateful for my dog. He might be interrupting a little bit, but I feel a sense of love, and and if my wife's in the background making noise like coffee or something, I have gratitude for her. So it's really funny how if you can just sit peacefully, close your eyes and just center yourself, you naturally appreciate everything you have. And so meditation for me is really a big tool. I would love to find more tools, but for now it's really just been that 30 minutes I get to spend with myself in the day.
And are you sitting in kind of like a vipassana where it's just observing the thoughts? Do you have a mantra? How are you practicing? Are you listening to an app?
I'm listening to Sam Harris's Waking Up app.
Yes.
Yeah, for anyone that's not familiar, I highly recommend that app. So listening to an app, but I actually need to get more just familiar with Vipassana, like you said, and that's just the practice of observing thought, like you said. Is that correct?
Yeah. So Vipassana is just kind of sitting and observing. So it's moving into the space of the observer and allowing, as you described so beautifully, these kind of emergent emotions and sensations. So you have your physical body, sensations rising from that. You have your emotional body and sensations rising from that. You might not even know where they come from. You might just feel randomly like a tinge of anger. Your blood gets hot, your hands start sweating. You're like, what's that? Oh, that's anger. And then, your thoughts go by, like people have described, like clouds through the sky. You're just watching your thoughts. That's Vipassana. There's so many incredible tools out there and so many practitioners that are coming out of the woodwork during this time to offer virtual lessons. I have to flex my gratitude muscle at times. So as I mentioned, one way I do that is through this little abundance notebook that I carry, where I constantly am just writing down good things that happen to me and always trying to fill that up every day. The other is simply sitting quietly and repeating, I am grateful for, and then filling in the blank is another incredible tool for cultivating gratitude. Because when you're in that state of gratitude, even if it's a little bit forced, as you get into it, you realize, one, you have so many things to be grateful for. And then two, it's actually physiologically impossible for you to be feeling true gratitude at the same time that you're feeling angst and anxiety and fear. So that's really powerful. And then to your point on recognizing everyone around you and acknowledging them and being present with them, there's also meditations that cultivate empathy. There's the metta meditation in Buddhism, which is the meditation for loving awareness, loving kindness, or compassion. And this is a meditation where you can actually visualize a stranger or visualize someone that's, you quote unquote, your enemy or giving you a hard time. Visualize someone close to you that you love. Visualize yourself and send yourself love through a mantra like, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be free from suffering, may you be at peace.
I think Sam's in the course. I've done that a few times.
He does a metta meditation, and Sam's like the OG. Yeah,
he's a genius. He's crazy.
Such a genius.
Yeah, it's nuts.
I actually applied to be his. He put out an application like 2.5 years ago to have a manager for the podcast, and I applied, and I got to like the last round, and had to do like a video interview, and man, I didn't make it. It's okay. C'est la vie. It's how things are meant to be.
Well, do you know what's crazy, man, is again, just how the universe works is that yesterday, later on the evening, I was doing a media training session. So so for those who aren't familiar, oftentimes record labels will have their artists do like a little 2-hour course with someone via Zoom to learn how to speak about their album and what they're, what they're promoting and stuff. And for me,
someone super interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And for me, someone who rambles a lot, it's maybe nice to know when to like dial that back at times.
Dude, you're preaching to the choir over here. As you can see, I go on long-winded rants.
I'm the same person, so I love it. So yeah. But I bring this up because the woman who I was speaking with and who was conducting the teaching, her name's Tracy Pepper, and I mentioned she's a very she's actually a life coach in a pretty, well, I didn't realize, but a pretty like a spiritual figure, like a pretty powerful I don't know. She has a pretty from speaking with her, like you could tell she just has this like very natural awareness of everything, and it was really inspiring. Anyways, we were talking, and I got to find out that her boyfriend in the 5th grade was Sam Harris, and we got to talk about so finding that out opened up my comfort zone of being able to share my experiences recently with meditation and spirituality and stuff, and it just was such a funny way to get us both our feet in the door into wanting to talk about that stuff. And so we ended up spending the next like 45 minutes of that session just speaking about what you and I are speaking about now. It had nothing to do with how to talk about songs and a product. It was just about like this human interaction we were having. And so I think I don't know, it's so funny how the universe will be like, you know what, I had a better plan for you. Like, I'm going to put you in this direction instead of what you thought you were going to do. And
meanwhile, like in a way it prepped you, because here we are talking about, spirit.
100%. Isn't it? It's the craziest thing. You mentioned meta practice. I think is meta, correct?
Meta.
And I can remember Sam in one of his lessons, he was having, I'll say having me, but having everyone listening, envision somebody in their mind who they care for, and to actively wish them love and happiness. And it wasn't about you. It was about sending that person, something special. And through doing that, I've realized how much that brings me, and helping. I think that's actually really circling back to what I was saying about it's so important to just
service.
Service, and treating, for me at least, music as a way to service people. I think I'm realizing that helping others is one of the best ways for me to feel joy and gratitude and stuff. So for anyone listening, I really do think that I think we underestimate how powerful it is to help someone else, because what you do I'm reading also Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now. And I was reading the other day how what we do to others is exactly what we receive. So it's like, if you're nice to someone, you're going to receive that as well. And I think we forget that. It's such a powerful thing, I think, to remember, is that what we send out is also what we receive. Kind of like a boomerang, it's like, if I'm mean to you, I'm only going to feel anger inside, and that's only going to be a detriment to my mind. So as long as we can feel that and remember that what we're giving to others is what we end up receiving as well, why wouldn't we do that? It's like that old age, treat others how you want to be treated. And you're taught that as a kid, but like it's so it was called the golden rule, when I was growing up, but it's a golden rule. Yeah. It's like, it really is so.
I think it's from the Sermon on the Mount. But it's, like it is so powerful. And it's, as you said, sometimes the cliche is the most profound. And so nothing is new under the sun. And we all transmute kind of this ancient wisdom through our own experience. And so we have something unique to say because we are the only ones that have lived our exact experience in life and can carry these messages so that they will resonate with one specific person or another. But as far as the wisdom, it's available to all of us, and it's there, and it's a constant reminder for us on how we can improve our lives. Like I go back to books like 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, and there's stuff in there that it's so simple, but it's powerful. And Deepak's teachings, and he does these 21-day free abundance meditations, which I recommend to anyone listening to go sign up for Deepak Chopra and Oprah's sessions. And these teachings are available. And as a human being, I need constant reminder of that ancient wisdom. I mean, I wanted to touch on something you said as well, because you talked, when the show started, it was about social media and engagement and mental health and whatnot. You mentioned kind of being on the subway and being on your phone. And I'm curious, like as an artist, you have to do a lot of social media work, right? Like you're managing your accounts yourself, I guess. Maybe you have some support, but how do you balance that constantly needing to be available to your fans, in service to your fans, with like, I need some space for myself and some time, as you're about to enter this like media blitz for your new album? I'd be curious to know how you're feeling about that.
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think I'm still figuring it out. I don't know if I have an actual solution for it at the moment of how to balance that time properly, but you're right. It's like, as an artist, my job is to give everyone myself at all. When I want to, further my career, it's asking of me to give something of me to someone else. And so I think it's easy as an artist. I think you see a lot of musicians, committing suicide, and you have these crazy stories of musicians becoming, I don't even want to say musicians, I'll say artists, artists becoming drug addicts and dependent upon alcohol and yeah, some have taken their lives. Some of the most creative people of all time have killed themselves. And you think, why is that? And I think it's because you're always so in your own head about yourself and how it reflects to others. And the ego is such a powerful thing. And I think it can take over. And so with me, I'm really trying to treat social media as a tool for, getting my message out there to people. But like you said, also realizing that it's not something I depend on. It's there when I want it, when I want to use it, but that I can lean back on myself and not look at my phone and just be present and just be a being. That's much more profound than tweeting something, So I think I'm still working on that, but I think I'm trying to start using.
But you also have to communicate. You also have to communicate with your fans, right? Like they expect that of you.
Right. I know. It's a really interesting thing, and I think I think it's my responsibility. I really do, to be there for the people that have been brave enough to put their guard down and reach out to me. I think I have to reciprocate that with my 100% attention as well. That naturally will sometimes not be there all the, obviously I'll be doing something and maybe my day will be hectic and I can't get to every message, but as an artist and as someone who is willing to send a message out into the world, you can't help but expect that there's going to be someone on the other end of that really taking it to heart and impacted by it. So I think it's my responsibility to be there for as many people as possible, but still not beat myself up about it, and give myself compassion and have self-love for myself, and not to expect myself to be Clark Kent every day, and be able to respond to everybody, because that's just not possible. So and again, I said this before, but I'm still trying to figure out that kind of like yin and yang of this, is like that balance of how do I facilitate people's questions and their concerns and the things they're going through, but also have time to do that for myself. But through doing that, I think it's a really beautiful like exercise, because it reminds me of how important it is to not only care for others, but care for myself. And I think a lot of times we as people, we forget that self-care is arguably the most important. Before helping someone, I think you need to like have yourself in tune and have yourself like in a good spot. So
it's the yin and yang of being of service to others and taking care of yourself. And it's the most beautiful when you can do both kind of through the same action, but sometimes we need to draw inward. So, you have the classic put your oxygen mask on first analogy.
I thought, it's funny. That came right to my mind that's so funny you said that. When I was speaking, I was like, I feel like I'm on an airplane all of a sudden.
Yeah, we're vibing, man. I feel like you've said some things that have been popping into my head as we've been going. I want to be mindful of time. I've got just like a couple of other quick questions. Like what messaging are you receiving from the labels, from the publishers, from, the touring companies about what's next for the broader music industry? Or for just yourself, which is likely what they're messaging to other artists as well.
Yeah. Well, through, it's not like, it's funny you asked that, because I think some people do have this idea that, labels are telling us like, okay, like, or touring companies or whatever are being like, okay, you need to sit on the couch and you're not going to play a show till this date. And to a certain extent that is correct, because I've seen articles I've been doing because I've seen your videos obviously. And I've seen that you do your fair research on this pandemic and stuff. And same with me, as far as the touring side of this business, I love to do research on when we think things will be back to normal as far as concerts go and mass gatherings. But at the moment, I've seen articles published that say like touring isn't going to be in full effect till the fall of 2021. I'm optimistic it'll be before that, but again, who's to say? I think the overall message, though, to get to your question from like these giant organizations and these companies is it's kind of uncertainty, because I think, they're not the doctors and the scientists figuring this out. They're kind of similar to us. We're just kind of waiting for that higher order to give us some sort of direction. So I think it's interesting to be in this business, because for me, I'll even go to Jesse sometimes, my manager, and be like, all right, dude, when our show is going to be back to normal? And, but realize that he's just another guy who has none of these answers. And so
to that point, you mentioned like the powers that be and the doctors and epidemic researchers and whatnot, and they don't know because there's not enough data. Like they don't really know. They're learning as they're going, right? Like the estimates for deaths in New York City and other places, a month ago versus today are dramatically different. And part of that is because we quarantined to stomp the curve, but also, who knows? We're discovering that 40% of, or 20 to 30% of New Yorkers have antibodies. So in general, I think that's interesting. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Like nobody knows. But I was curious kind of what information you're receiving as an artist and what your take is.
My take on it, yeah, I mean, the information that I'm receiving is pretty much it's information that's accessible to everyone else who wants to know about it. As far as like, for example, I do my tours with Live Nation, and I think Live Nation, I think they released a statement recently just about projections. I think they were the ones that spoke about 2021 touring and how that's probably going to be the next time that we see concerts happening. But I think it's our duty as just like humans on earth to not rack our brains. And this parallels with with the whole theme of this conversation is not get too crazy into when things are going to get back to normal, and not get too swept up into the analytics of everything and the science of it all. And similarly with how the universe works and how God works and stuff. It's like, it's comforting to know that it's not of our capabilities to understand what's going on. You know, it's past our comprehension. So I think, that in a weird way, as a musician, as someone who wants to get back on the road, it gives me peace to know that it's not my responsibility to crunch the numbers and find out when I can get back, you know? And that's not to say I'm pawning the problem off to someone else, but
Jesse, get to work.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's more like, you know, it's just, it's having comfort in that God in the universe, or however you interpret that term, is in control of this, and to give it to that being to figure it out.
It's so on point. I mean, my coach, Aaron Rose, who was on the show, like, you know, part of some of the integrations is just like, can we give our fears, our anxieties, can we like offer them to universe, to source, to whoever, like, take these from me, you know, like I don't have the answers. And I, you know, almost as like a sacrifice of these feelings and this desire to know, just let go of it. I think that's really cool. I want to ask about one more thing, and then I'm going to let you go. What about this Travis Scott? Like, what about virtual concerts? What about, you know, the metaverse and 3D worlds and all this shit? Like, what are you seeing on that front? And like, do you think that that's possibly like the future of music?
Really quick, what is he doing?
Was it Travis Scott that did the Fortnite concert, or was it someone else?
No, you're right. It was Travis Scott. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so he had like 12 million people come on his like this like virtual experience on Fortnite. It looked trippy and dystopian as all, you know, hell basically, but it's kind of cool. You know, I love sci-fi, so.
Yeah, no, I saw a clip of that actually. I didn't really know what it was, but now that you're saying it, yeah, you're right. It was like this virtual.
But I also think Chelsea and Jeremy did Room Service, you know, recently, which was hosted by the Andy King.
Dude, I think I'm seeing. I think I should say we're all seeing it already. That there's a lot of these virtual festivals happening, and there's these these companies extending opportunities for musicians to play little sets to release to the public, and you know, money is being donated in those efforts, and it's really cool. I think that is going to be more popular this year. I don't see that slowing down as long as there's not real concerts. I don't see the virtual concerts slowing down, because people need that itch to be scratched, you know, that of receiving music, no matter. And I think people will kind of take it as any way they can if it's not going to be the real thing, like at a concert. So I think this is a great and really innovative way. I think we're starting to see, just in general, just like the like power of like human minds and how innovative we really can become in this time. I mean, it's not just music, it's everything. And how we can, instead of fighting, like, obviously we want to fight against this virus, but how can we like dance and flow with it and make it a part of our life instead of neglecting it and trying to avoid it. And so I think that's really cool. It's cool to see people in my industry coming up with these ideas that at the end of the day, they're still bringing people together. And yeah, we might be on chats and we're messaging others and we're not really in personal space, but like, I think it's really cool that there's still a way for us all to be together in this. And whether that's a live stream of someone singing or Travis Scott's Fortnite thing, you know,
you have anything up your sleeve in this virtual world for the album drop? Let's get it going, man. Let's do it. It sounds like fun.
need to. We have a few ideas brewing, I guess you could say.
You've been doing a show, like a quarantine show, like a little pop-up.
I have a thing called Quarantine Green, which is an interactive game show.
I saw a couple of them. They're so funny, man. That's amazing.
Thank you.
I know, as you said, people kind of just creative solutions coming up everywhere. So what's Quarantine Green?
Yep. So it's literally, we're filming another episode today. Actually, it's just we go on Instagram, and I when you go on Instagram Live, people can request to be in your chat. They can request to talk to you. And so
I've been doing some breath works.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah. So what I do is I just ask, we get 3 contestants, and we just select random people, and we ask them 10 questions, and we have like the questions on my TV on AirPlay. And it's like a real little game show set. Like my living room is turned into a little game show.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, I know. We ask them 10 questions, and you can win up to $92. So Quinn XCII, $92. And we obviously pay whoever wins all that money, and then we actually match that and donate it to a COVID-19 relief fund. And so awesome. It's just a cool way to kind of get across my silliness to people and show them that I'm just just being a goofball, an idiot,
yeah, exactly.
and just be an ass of myself. But I think I enjoy it. Yeah. Again, dude, it goes back to, I feel like, this theme of service, and just like, I love being able to just, make someone smile. Yeah. And just, if I can give them $20 via a virtual game show, that's not too monumental, but it's that offering that is so impactful, and that it's a priceless thing. I totally forgot about HQ trivia. Like, what happened to that? This was inspired by HQ.
Yeah, did that thing just go away? Like, it was so hot for a minute. Everybody thought it was going to be the future of everything.
I don't know how that is not back in business during this time.
I'm going to look it up after this. It's insane.
Yeah, I remember being at dinner with my parents and like being like, guys, I can't talk. I got to play HQ. And it was
trying to get like real money for a few months there. It was wild.
We don't have the HQ budget right now.
I was going to say, yeah, exactly. I'm pretty sure I applied for a job at that place as well. After fire, I was applying to jobs all over the place, man. It wasn't working. But it's all good. It worked out in the end. So before you go, I want to did Jesse tell you that I can beatbox?
No, he did not. Wait, this is also not planned for anyone.
No, this was not planned. But are you down to like drop a couple lines from the album, or what? We don't have to if you don't want to.
I'm trying to think. Is it gonna?
I'm putting you on the spot. I'm putting you on the spot.
I'm not stalling because I'm not interested, because I am. But is it going to lag on our end? Like, is it going to be in sync?
Sam, you can put this in sync, and we'll cut it if it's not in sync. Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
This.
I'm gonna go for it. Ready? Tell me if this beat is off. By the way, this is the first. It's been a long time.
Do you want me? Because there's no rapping on the album. It's all singing.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. It's all singing. It's not rapping.
What the fuck? Why? I'm the worst. How come I didn't know that? Was your last album all singing?
For the most part, yeah. I mean,
stop it.
There's bits of hip hop in there. Yeah.
Oh, the worst. Okay, well, maybe we can cut this whole section out then, or we can keep it. It's all good. I care about the human. Like that's what I'm here for. Okay, fine. Then if you're singing, then beatboxing, we'll let it slide. And I think we should keep this in as well, because it's actually really funny if you're cool with that. But maybe I'll do my beatbox for the lookup listeners another time.
Okay. Yeah. I need to hear that, dude. I didn't realize.
Oh, well, we can do it right now. Fuck it. Here we go.
Let's do it. Hey, that was really good, dude. I'm not just saying that. Because some people, I'll meet some people that say they can beatbox, and it's just like, most half-assed
so
thing.
bad. That was pretty. It was better when I was younger.
that was genuinely good. That was genuinely good.
Oh man, we used to literally stand in circles for like 2 hours every Friday night, just beatboxing and freestyling.
My friends and I freestyling. That is still our favorite thing to do. Is get drunk and literally just rap and be idiots. But it's the most
fun because you just get in that flow and just let shit go, man. It's unbelievable. Well, when I'm back in Venice, I'll come through and we can do some freestyling together.
I was gonna say, man, yeah, I'll have to get you over to the house and record something.
Awesome. Well, dude, Mike, thanks so much for coming on. I'm just like inspired by your perspective, by the positivity and optimism that you bring into everything that you do. And I'm so grateful that the folks listening will get to feel that and hear that, and that your community and your fans will be able to kind of tap into, who you are and what you represent outside of even the art that you create. So
thank you, dude. That really means a lot to me. Thank you. And thank you for giving me the chance to speak on it, because I feel like I probably wouldn't have there's not many, for a musician, there's not many outlets like this that I would normally do where I can just kind of speak my mind and show people this is like a side of me. So I appreciate you having me on, and also, dude, just thanks for being brave about, because I think people underestimate just like, there takes courage to be able to speak on this stuff and show others that you're comfortable enough to, because I think you and I and others who think similar like this can easily be kind of labeled as that term kind of like nutty, or like I think something about like spiritual speaking freaks people out. Mm-hmm. And when you break it down to brass tacks and realize it's just about presence and stillness, it's such not an intimidating conversation. And I think as long as we have people like you who are using outlets to share that and show people it doesn't have to be this crazy guru
woo
woo that no one's ever going to be able to understand, like I think it's just very important to keep that conversation going. So dude, thank you for doing what you're doing. I appreciate I'm a fan and I check it out all the time. So this was cool just to be a part of.
Thank you, brother. If there's one thing you want to leave the fans with before we go, one last thought, anything at all, the floor is yours.
Yeah. I think I'm going to have to selfishly plug myself for a second.
Yes, that's what this time is for.
And just and there's a new song coming out. What's Friday? What date is Friday?
Friday is May 1st. Good question. When will this air? So I'm kind of caught up on episodes. I've got, I'm releasing one ahead of you. This will air in exactly 2 weeks. Okay,
great. So if you're listening to this, there's already a song out called Coffee that I put out featuring Marky Basie, and it's a great, just a great little start to this album rollout that I'm doing. And then my album's coming July 10th. So if you're a fan, and even if you don't even know who I am and you want to check out what music I like, the stuff we've talked about, please go ahead and check it out.
And it's singing, it's not rapping.
This is I think you're giving me motivation to now make a strictly hip hop album back after this, just spit bars. But I would say also too, before I go, not because I don't want to end on just a plug, but I would just say that if this conversation that Mark and I have had is something that is inspiring to you, I would really just like take that instinct and that feeling to heart and pursue looking at it more, because I can say from experience, it really has helped me so much. And I think now more than ever, we live in a world that's just so hectic. And I think as long as you can, despite everything going on outside of our control, if you can have control of how you feel, there's nothing more that you really need. And like I said earlier, I think the world will give you what you seek of it as long as you look at it in the way that you want to. So yeah, just don't underestimate the power of all this stuff. And if it's something you're into, if it's something that sounds interesting, please go ahead and check it out.
Yeah. Go deeper.
Yeah. Go deeper. Yeah.
Thank you, brother. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you for coming on, and I'll see you soon.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate it, man. Yeah. Let's hang out after.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm totally down. All right. Hello, Look Up listeners. One final note before we go. Thank you again for tuning in. Going forward, we'll be releasing new episodes of Look Up every Wednesday morning, Eastern Time. If you're getting value from this podcast and you want to give back to support our future, please take a moment to contribute to our community on Patreon. Our Patreon contributors have access to some great additional perks, including one-on-one meditations with yours truly. I've shared the link in the show notes below the episode. You can also find the show notes to this and previous episodes on our website, www.thelookuppodcast.com. If you can't contribute at this time, there are other helpful ways to give back. You can share this episode on social media, tag me, and or leave a review on your favorite podcast app. Trust me, every review goes a long way. If you want more content, including more of my personal thoughts, you can follow me on social media. My handle on both Instagram and Twitter is @WarkMeinstein, WarkMeinstein, or you can subscribe to the Look Up weekly newsletter on my website. I'm also very responsive to email, so feel free to send questions, booking inquiries, speaking requests, and sponsorship opportunities to marc@thelookuppodcast.com. Finally, for those of you that don't know, I lead virtual yoga, breathwork, and meditation classes, as well as one-on-one coaching and teaching sessions, which you can book from the website or my social media accounts. Thank you to Sam Palumbo and Patch Kid Music for the great intro and outro tunes and for the sound engineering. Thank you, brother. And thank you to all of you listeners for continuing to support the show, for tuning in. And I hope that you've been enjoying this journey as much as I have.